welcome back to our show Urban Transcendence, our show Ali Amashta and Martin Despang. We do this here like Christmas, like the best gift, you unwrap at the very end. So we still have to wait for Ali. She's going to come, just hang in there with us. So the two guests we were debating and agreeing on getting here are very special guests in a very special moment of events. One event is to come pretty soon. It's by ThinkTech Hawaii. It's the Downtown Forum on next Wednesday, the 21st. And the subject matter is closely related to our show Urban Transcendence, which in a nutshell, again, is about how do we transform, transition, transcend an urban fabric that's been basically born in the 20th century as a pretty static fossil structure. How can we transform that into a more dynamic, organic, vibrant 21st century, most likely post-fossil? So when we talk about developing, we already have development going on, and the biggest epicenter of development in our city of Honolulu is Kakaako. So next week, Jay is going to get the main players together who are involved and deal with Kaka'ako. So that's to come. Please, you guys, go there. It's an event where one can go, as opposed to our show. You can tune in, but that one you can go. It's a lunch event, so please come. And the other event was yesterday, so you can't go anymore because it's over, but it was a great event. So next one, please come. It's USGBC, so the United States Green Building Council, the chapter Hawaii, had their annual event at the Cancer Center in Kaka'ako. And once again, the location was sort of obligation for the host to bring people in who are active in the environment of Kaka'ako. So we thought we'd bring people in who weren't in either one of the events, but we cannot miss on them because they're very, very important people, activists in that area. And the other reason, when Ali and I were talking about how we grew up, we shared that with you at the very beginning of the show. There were both children of the urban, whereas she also has a rural experience, so she has both. But I'm a child of the urban, and so we talked about how to grow up in a city as a child, and that gets us to the aspect of the urban grit. So when developers talk about what they promise, it's mostly about walkable, it's about community, kaka'ako, they call it our kaka'ako, that's Kamehameha School's branding. It's about these promises, and it's about greening the streets, and it's about trees, and it's about well-being, which hopefully works. When I remember my own childhood, when I grew up in a similar environment, pretty dense, not as high density. I lost my earplug here, so I'm going to be, it's back. I grew up in a similar environment that was just not that high as far as the building size, but as far as density, similar. And what I remember aren't these kind of glossy experiences of that kind as the developers promise. They were more rugged. It was more like a jungle that kind of grew up, and it wasn't as dramatic as I will make it in a second. It wasn't gangs. This is Germany, so maybe that doesn't exist, at least not in the neighborhood I grew up with. But it was like cliques and developing social skills. So when I got out of school and got the homework done, sooner the better. We just went out and we assimilated around activities there were. And there was one thing that was special that the urban fabric wasn't able to accommodate. That was there was building things, making things happening, and the city of Hanover, which is to me now, I don't think we could do this anymore in terms of being afraid of things in code and regulations. That was a construction playground for children. So they basically had a couple of boards and hammers and nails, and we could go and do whatever. And we went crazy and built little high-rises at one point. there was a inspector, I guess you would call him, coming, and he told us we should lean a little over to the other side. And we just went crazy and had a lot of fun. So it was really about expressing ourselves. Why am I sharing that with you? For the reason that gets me to the introduction to our guests, hopefully now. So me, as one side of me being a professor of architecture, one of my duties is to advise our Doctor of Architecture students. 2 shows ago, we were introducing to you what that is. It's a very special program. It's the only one in the nation. So our doctoral candidates then have the choice with whom they want to work, and we have the choice also with whom we want to work. So when I got to know our today's guest, actually we got to know each other a little earlier, but then when we got to know each other, when we talked about his project, I got extremely excited about the project because it kind of related to my childhood experience, and I will leave it with that, and the rest they're going to tell you. So please welcome today's guest, who is Naomi Taga and Reyn Mukawa. So thank you both for being here today.
Thanks for having
us.
It's a pleasure. And yeah, why don't you go ahead, talk about one after another a little bit about yourself, where you come from, again, as I like to say, literally and figuratively. And later we talk about how we all got together and what your project is about.
Do you want to?
You can go first.
Okay, so hi, I'm Naomi Taga. I am a member and support the businesses of Fishcake in Kakaako, as well as Art+Flea, also home to Kaka'ako. So this is an area that I am very much interested in and spend most of my days in as of late. I am interested in, learning, exploring, and finding avenues within the kaka'ako space of how we share information and how we come together and kind of enact upon a vision for kaka'ako that maybe isn't being communicated elsewhere. I came to know Reyn, through old affiliations, but by fate or happenstance, and his current project speaks to my everyday experiences in kaka'ako, as well as this vision that I think we all share. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
So I'm Reyn Mukawa, finishing up my doctorate, my 7th year at UH. And Martin is my chair for my doctoral project, and Naomi's actually on my committee. And together we brainstormed this community project that I think it's an idea that I think is necessary for what's developing. It's an idea that I think the developers haven't really thought of. And I think it's something that the people will want to use, not only now, but for the future generation.
So you started off actually very early, your research, so to explain to the interested audience again, the structures at Doc 1 and Doc 2, whereas Doc 1 is a research phase where you investigate in the foundations of what you want to do and investigate and gather material and try to wrap your arms around where it should go, to then hopefully in Doc 2 dig in and basically materialize the project. So very early in the project phase of the research, it was about graffiti. And it still is about graffiti, but it developed. So maybe you start talking about that initial phase and how, what's your access to the art and to the arts and crafts of graffiti?
Well, I've always been interested in art in general. I've always taken art classes. I think creatively that's what I've excelled at. So when I've been working in Kakaako for the last 4 years now at a graphic design firm. And the neighborhood of Kakaako is very tight-knit. You get to know who the surrounding businesses are, you get to know each other. And it's very much like a residential neighborhood, except everyone has their businesses there, and you get to know each other on personal levels. I think that's what's special about Kakaako as a work environment. It's similar to a live environment. And with their presence with graffiti now, it's become a sort of hub for that in Honolulu, where people come down to check out the powwow events, or even the events that 808 Urban will put on. And these are special to Kakaako, and I don't feel it would work anywhere else, and that's why I felt so passionate about this idea.
What brought you, Naomi, initially to Kakaako?
Friends.
Okay.
Yeah, and affiliations, you know, it's just I think I first started meeting a lot of this community through Chinatown, and then, you know, trying to find new things to do. Yeah, and just through connections, I mean, solely it's like the diaspora of the community, you know, whether it was natural or not. Yeah, we just have found a home there, and really have created more and more everyday an identity and kind of an ownership of the place.
And how long ago was that? Or I mean, what year did it start?
Oh my gosh, it's recent.
Okay.
Yeah, been a year or two. But like Fishcake, for example, they've been there for 6 years. Yeah, and Art+Flea specifically has made a home in the past 3 years, like at Fresh Cafe in Kakaako, and now we're on Cook Street. So, yeah, that's the real-time connection.
So, coming to your research, what did you find out? How did the graffiti scene start? And maybe talk a little bit about the people involved and the players and introduce them.
Well, I think you can actually help chime in on this. I think with the events with, especially with powwow, it's not only this idea of graffiti, but it's what graffiti represents. It gives people an outlet to express themselves, and it gives them their own identity, the style of graffiti, the placement, the technique. That's what gives them their identity, and that's the way they can express themselves. And in many ways, I think it speaks louder than if they were to give a speech by putting up a mural. And I think that's what Kakaako allowed them to do. And recently, actually, they've been branching out into doing powwow elsewhere. They're launching powwow Taiwan soon, right?
Yeah, well, I think, correct me wrong, Jasper Wong started it in Hong Kong first, but it really speaks to the times of, you know, Honolulu in general, and how like more connected we are with the world and whatnot. I mean, graffiti is being blasted for years, decades, you know, on the mainland and international wise. So to see Hawaii become a hub is really a sign of the times, that we are becoming more urban, you know, changing, more connected. So that's interesting. I did a little homework and I watched your last program with Hibbert. And what struck me was saying how architecture and art, you know, reveal the history of the times. And graffiti, more than anything, is like, I'm here now. You know, I don't know what's gonna be here tomorrow. It could be washed over, broken down. But if anything, it's like of the moment. You know, what is happening now. So I thought that's...
So if I understand that correctly, but you got sort of excited about it, and then shortly after that, someone else got excited about Kakaako for different reasons, right? I mean the developers, right?
Yeah.
So that's a conflict, I guess. And conflicts could be traumatizing, but you both are a great example for conflict solving in a creative way, in a very inspirational way. So maybe you want to talk about the conflict a little bit.
I think first we're hard-headed. I mean, there's conflict, but it's like that desire to create and not knowing what's tomorrow, but just I'm going to do it anyway. It's seeing opportunity even in conflict, which sometimes makes the rhetoric even more interesting and the narrative. But yeah,
I think it's something that's inevitable at this point. We need to find ways to work with it and try not to work directly against it. It's not in the power of our hands to stop it necessarily, but we can find ways to integrate what the community wants with what the developer wants. And then it kind of turns into a win-win situation, which I think is the best way to approach any situation like that.
So also a little, I mean, this is obviously always a little silent promotion for our program. I cannot deny or hide that it is. But I think it speaks for our program that we, the Doctor of Architecture program, that we put research first. And there was some debate, I guess, within the collegial realm about, okay, what does graffiti have to do with architecture? You know, graffiti is an art, and it's even debatable if architecture is art. There was Rebecca, I don't know if you saw her, you don't have time. I have to say at this point, actually, that having Reyn here is almost brutal, because Ren's project that he's going to present is actually due these minutes.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, to be more specific. So that says two things. Either I'm a really, really bad mentor, or he's a really good student, or both. You know, I leave this up to someone else to judge. But again, thank you so much for being here. And it's also, positively speaking, that's what we do. And thinking is it's a rehearsal for his, I never liked the word defense, but that's the official term when they defend the art project. So that defense is, which I hope is more convincing, which it is going to be next Friday. So we hope this is also a kind of a good rehearsal for next week. Kind of which I always recommend to students and to myself. Not always do we have the time or take the time to basically do a test run, you know, before you do. So taking that. So maybe you talk a little bit about this kind of progression from graffiti being art to the art of architecture, which is a discipline that you want to get into. And also potentially maybe the kind of where it could lead you, not maybe directly and you know, as a one-way street, but what you want to do as an architect later, which kind of ways you could see yourself being engaged.
I think when I first approached the design project after the research portion of graffiti, I looked into how areas like Portland and Seattle and San Francisco and even New York, they have what they call creative cities within their city. And it's usually an avenue or a pocket neighborhood where artists, fashion designers, and musicians, they come together. There's shops that are all related to the creative fields. They have live work centers, they have boutiques. And with Honolulu upcoming with all the art scene, Kakaako was kind of the main hub for it to happen. So when we investigated where potential places for this creative center to be, we looked into where is it possible. So I had to dig into what's actually going to be built. So looking into the Kamehameha School's master plans, the Howard Hughes plans, and looking at potential sites where this program would flourish. And we found one, which was actually in the center of mass development. It's, I have an aerial shot of it here, actually.
Maybe before you do, maybe we take a little break, because I think we created so much excitement now that everyone is like burning to see it. So just like Christmas, we hold on for a little second. So take a little break, and then I hope you'll be back for our show, which we actually labeled today the Kaka'ako counterculture, and with our guests Naomi Taga and Reyn Mukawa. So see you in a couple of minutes.
I'm Jay Fidel. That's Sharon Moriwaki of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. And every Wednesday we have Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy. We've been doing it for some time now, and we have some fantastic guests on there, unbelievable guests who give us insight into what is going on in a very complex, sometimes very confusing, sometimes very disappointing area of progress in the state. So we love doing this. We love meeting them. We love talking to them. We love having their ideas out on the table. So maybe, just maybe, we can all make some sense of what's going on. Sharon, what do you think? think?
I think that's absolutely correct. We enjoy ourselves meeting with all these people and hearing about the energy and the state of clean energy, and hopefully we advance clean energy for the state. So it's terrific. Join us. Come
Okay,
join
it's
us.
every Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday is Energy Day. Every
Energy
Wednesday,
Wednesday.
4 to 5 p.m. Hawaii, the state of clean energy, here on ThinkTech Hawaii.
Energy
We'll see you
Wednesday.
there.
Welcome back to Alia Mashta's Martin Despang's show Urban Transcendence. Today's topic is Kakaako counterculture, and our guests are Naomi and Reyn. So yeah, let's talk about your project, which you almost already did. So now here's the camera one, so the audience is excited about where you positioned it, and I think as important or more important, why in that location.
So the site that we actually specifically chose was 670 Awahi Street, which is currently the Coral Commercial Center. And with this site, it actually surrounds all 4 sides with Kamehameha's development. And it became kind of our nickname of a donut hole, where it's kind of this little pocket in the middle that could respond to the surrounding development. So below it is what my design proposal is for the building. I'm proposing to reuse majority of the building, total with its retail shops, and keeping the idea of this is the creative center. So home to recent vacant retail shops and offices that had to leave certain buildings because of the development. This is their new home where they can collectively come together and work collaboratively. So this is also an aerial shot of the site. So this is Pohukaina Street on the top, Keawe, Coral, and Oahi, surrounding all sites. This is also just a zoom-in shot of the plan. And with these spaces, we hope to create this mixture between recreational spaces, retail, learning, and public use. And it's a public plaza that's necessary with all the residential development, to help with this sense of community that I hope won't be lost after the development.
So you're, maybe you share a little bit the process, because you weren't jumping right away on that side. There were a number of very sophisticatedly reflected alternative sides that you also tested.
There were multiple sites that I was investigating on what would be the best home for this place. One was actually a block north of it, looking at the Pohukaina site, where they planned the Forest City to develop the 700-foot tower next to Mother Waldron Park, and how that area could be integrated as a public use space, considering it already has a public park. Also look down into the Kakaako Waterfront Park, the old Fisherman's Wharf building, that site, because that actually acts as kind of Kaka'ako's gateway from Alamana Boulevard, and how that site could have potentially worked.
So what was the reason you settled for this one?
This site is really embedded in central Kakaako, and that's what I think it spoke more volumes to the fact that this is a central statement about what's going on around it, and I think it created for a stronger argument.
And your approach, you can go into the next pictures a little bit more in detail with the approach.
Yes,
Well, you already said it's going to be, and that's also a process which I'm sharing with the audience. I don't even know if you want to share all that, but if not, you just don't answer. You know, that's your privilege. You can do that. You're right. But you started actually with a new construction. You basically kind of thought it would be sort of more ideal to start with a blank page, with a white page, and from scratch, so to speak. And so, what made you choose to transcend? We could use the title of the show for this project, actually, to transcend that building, that old fabric, into a new, more meaningful future.
I think with Kaka'ako, there's so much importance of us reflecting on the past. So I thought it was necessary to keep renditions of what Kakaako was. So I pretty much scratched the idea of developing a new project from the ground up, and working with the existing building to kind of pay homage to what it was.
Or is,
yeah.
And will be.
Will be, yes, because of the development. I mean, majority of what we know today after the industrial workplace for Kakaako, what it was known as, will be gone. Majority of the warehouses and the iconic ironworks type buildings will be demolished to make way for the development of the high-rise towers. And around my site specifically, there will be 9 towers. So keeping it from giving birth to something that existed already was, I think, a good way to approach this project.
Yeah, from the very foundation,
Yeah.
it's, it speaks to your idea. We got excited about that.
Yeah, we did. More and more. And I think also share that you did some research. So, I mean, you as a student have the right to dream and be speculative and you just have to justify it to your own agenda and hypothesis. We allow that. And there are great projects like that. But you, down the process, get more and more excited about the potential of realities, and like saying, if your project, would actually be feasible, that would add a totally new dimension to it. You found out that this lot actually, for a reason, has not been claimed yet for another high-rise, and for the reason of land ownership, that it's not in the hands of one of the big players, and it might become, but we all got super excited about your project, that it has the potential to be exposed not only to the developers around, but also to the owners. And basically saying, what if? What if? And make your statement and really saying, this is something that complements. Is not contrasting, as you said, it's not kind of trying to confront what's happening, because it's going to happen anyways. But it's trying to saying, hey, if I think if we look at I think the way you strategically sort of demonstrate that and rendered it, that the urban fabric, this is like a green lung, or it's a lung first of all, and there's also green aspects to it, but it's a lung that allows the neighborhood to breathe like a lung does, as opposed to if you just overstock it with building stock. And that means in a materialized way, but also in a spiritual way, in a way that, these activities, if you just have corridors and canyons of streets, that you maybe put some street furniture in, that's not going to do it. That's your proposal, right? That's your statement. You need that place that is more participatory, is more engaging, maybe is more rugged. And that's why I started introducing you guys with my own little story, that we needed to get the hands dirty when we were kids. You need to dig in. Sometimes it gets a little, you're kind of hitting each other and rub each other on each other, because that's like how you grew up. You develop these social skills, as opposed to sitting in your kind of conditioned again, conditioned in multiple ways, climatically, fully
Air
air conditioned,
conditioned.
but also socially conditioned and
Mm-hmm.
isolated units.
Mm-hmm.
And just doing your necessary walking by its nature doesn't mean anything but being physically in motion, right? But when walking becomes a social experience and that leads to interaction, then walking is really fun. And so, yeah, maybe you go a little bit more into detail of your projects. You see a lot of people in there, so walking is a big part of the project.
This is actually a shot of the corner of Coral and Oahe. So the main idea for the design focus was that to let the building be a canvas. So the building itself would be constantly changing, inviting with new artists to come and put up their work. But also to kind of showcase this as kind of a 5 points. I don't know if you're familiar with 5 points in New York. But it became the identity for that main avenue in Long Island City and Queens. Was 5 Points was this industrial ruin factory that became this international hub for graffiti. And that's kind of what I wanted to invoke with this building, was that Kakaako was becoming that new international hub, especially with Paolo. So that with this building, it can help become its new home.
Great. You guys got us increasingly excited, so let's take another short break to then be back with our today's topic about kaka'ako's counterculture with our today guests Naomi Taga and Reyn Mukawa.
I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the ThinkTech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Olalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Welcome back to Yamashita's Martin Despang's Urban Transcendence show today with our topic Kakaako counterculture with our guests Naomi Taga and Reyn Mukawa. You just gave us some glimpses of your project, and you talked about the building being a canvas. So you basically keep, and the building isn't, respectfully said, very pretty right now. It's a very generic kind of a warehouse that, as you say, the strategy is to make it dynamic as far as graffiti, because graffiti is, as Naomi said, could be gone tomorrow for different reasons because of reactions to it from different sides. Either the graffiti people don't like it overnight, they slipped over and said, okay, we screwed up, we need to do something new, or other people take offense and they paint over it, which is probably more likely. So there are all these dynamics, and that is actually a really, really exciting aspect for a building as a building strategy, because usually we set buildings in stone or in kaka'ako, more in glass, and then that's it, and they never change unless the clouds move by and you got a certain play of reflections. But that aside, buildings, and that has little to do with social interaction, that it just has to do with clouds moving by. So I think that's an extremely exciting aspect of your project, to say, first of all, I keep the old building. I have to repeat, and my good friend and colleague Professor Rockwood is by now teasing me already with this quote that I keep saying: the most sustainable building is the one you don't build, and the second one is the one that already exists. So yes, David, I did it again. So that's something you took advantage of. But then to deal with old buildings is you can do it this way or another way. To my knowledge, there's actually one block over Mauka side, there's, I think it's Kamehameha School, that keep that kind of Hudson quant building.
The
I
Olike
think.
building.
Yeah, for more, I would allow myself to say sentimental reasons. You know, there's different ways to deal with history and with culture, whereas yours seems to be more an engaging, a more, I allow myself to say disrespectful in a positive way, if that exists, you know, in a way to say, you know, I dig in. The building isn't a sacred, you know, cute little piece that, you know, I try to bring back and repair the stucco or what is, you know. You literally, and maybe you show more how you were digging in, what you were taking out, what you were inserting into it.
Sure. So actually, this is a plan view of the site. So the main building actually took up this entire block. So there's pockets of area where I removed the roof, worked with this, with where the structural grid is, and kept certain areas untouched, all while using the original foundation, which is actually elevated 3 feet. So it actually gave this nice elevated plaza feel to the central portion, as well as keeping with this second height level here, which is actually exists in the original building. And then I elongated it to make that event space for the central part of the building.
You want to talk a little bit more specific about the functions of the building, what you can all do? I mean,
Yes.
you touched on it in a more generic way, but what can you all do in the building?
So this is a shot of the building without the roof. So with the site here, this is actually the existing parking lot becomes these grass pavers to give the site more vegetation and more life to it. This warehouse here actually has these little makeshift boutiques that can be for temporary retailers to come in and out. Whereas out here, this is kind of the outdoor retail boutique cottages for more permanent tenants. And then that leads into this warehouse space here that is actually meant for event space, assembly space, for events like Art+Flea, who I think would flourish on this site, or even to have farmers markets, I think, which is necessary for Kakaako also. There wasn't even anything that I could find of the plans to put in a grocery store with the development. With all of these new high-rises, the closest grocery store would be in Ala Moana Center. So to have a farmer's market here, I think would be a great asset to Kakaako. And that's what this space kind of allows for. On the second level up here, it's a more private area, would be held for spaces like 808 Urban, who need classroom spaces, these offices for people to come and collaborate on graffiti. So I allocated space for that type of program. And then as for the building up here, or this space up here, I relatively left it untouched, which could become, or what I would hope it to become, is kind of pocket offices for creative programs, as well as a co-working space for programs like Box Jelly. And this corner up here, which I left untouched, also would be kind of the administrative offices for the site, and as well as an outdoor cafe and a kind of small coffee shop in the central plaza. And that kind of makes up the total program for it to become this recreational, creative site.
Yeah. Again, for me, it brings back great memories, childhood memories, to another degree, that the urban fabric I was growing up, the next block over was the farmer's market block, so it wasn't built. It was almost exactly what you were doing, so Thanks for bringing all these good memories back. You know, and Friday was the day when the big farmers market were, and that was the day when, you know, my mother went and met all the neighbors, and, you know, I went with her and helped carrying the stuff, and it was really, and at the end of the day, in the summer, there was a guy with a big kind of a water pressure truck who was cleaning it. And that guy, we made him our friend, and that became our urban water fountain. You know, so he splashed us. So it was really, really the event around the aspect of food. So again, I mean, food supply is one thing logistically, you know, that people, you're totally right, because if I mean, everyone talks about that urban living is sustainable because it has a small footprint. That is true. But if I don't provide what you propose, which is the mercantile and social infrastructure, it can become a vertical suburb that has the same, or vertical sprawl, that has the same problem as a horizontal sprawl and suburb, that people need actually to go from their unit up in the tower down into the parking garage and drive somewhere and come back. And you don't help anyone, because then they never talk to anyone, and even you don't even save gas. So it's like really, really totally meaningful what you do. And another example is from the architectural history is Mies van der Rohe's Lakeshore Drive apartment towers in Chicago, that whenever I took my students there to just, you know, analyze the building, the third trip we saw that little door on the back side of the tower, and it was an integrated grocery store. And I have some lovely pictures of a woman who had her home dress on, and she bought a sweet potato, and she said, "That's my lunch," and she walked it back up. So I never would I have thought that Mies van der Rohe is a sustainable architect, but he was, because he understood this kind of mechanism. So I talked to the one who runs the store, and he said he was running another one a couple blocks over, and somehow these owners weren't quite easy to work with, so he basically pulled out, and they came back to him and were begging and saying, "Come back, because the value of the units are dropping because he's gone." That shows, I think, how really essential and strategic your proposal is. And we both, I think, want to encourage you to, and this is part of it, getting the word out. Your project deserves to be brought to the attention of the other people involved.
Yeah, I think you've really tried to address one, like the customers, the community members, and then their real-time needs and then desires, as opposed to providing like the solution first, you know, which I think a lot of this development is. This is the solution without actually looking at, you know, where are you gonna get your sweet potato from? So this is what gets me excited, speaking to all the community members and giving them a place, almost like a refuge, you know,
And I think your aspect of greening it, you know, opening up the sealed surfaces, having the rainwater being able to drain naturally. We got a phenomenon. Yeah, I show these pictures because they're perfectly complementing what I'm just touching on. We have something that we call heat island effect, which is if we seal surfaces, they radiate, especially here in the tropics, and it gets significant degrees hotter than it usually is. So breaking up these surfaces gets me back to the green lung metaphor for your project at this building. Also, that people will, from their towers, they will look down. And if they see this kind of, you know, functionally and aesthetically pleasing heart is another metaphor of their community, I think that just really adds value to the community. Have you shown that picture on the camera?
Yeah. So actually located right here in this central plaza is this makeshift shipping container cafe, portable cafe, with planters that would be made out of recycled pallets.
That are abundant in Kakaako.
Very
because
abundant
it's a
in
warehouse, so
Kakaako.
they're all over the place.
Yes. And this is also just a nighttime shot right outside of the warehouse space looking into here. And then this is a shot of inside the warehouse space where there would be Art+Flea's new home. And yeah, I don't have the other one.
We'll show this one.
This one? Oh.
Oh yeah. Oh, this is just another street view. Oh, I guess what also you can see is whatever buildings behind it. In all the street views that I was showing, are buildings that are proposed in the KS master plan. So if you were to look at this today, none of these would exist. Even with this rendering here, this is the current waterfront tower, but that's all that exists in solid. Everything that's translucent has yet to be developed, as well as in this shot here, looking into the back corner of Pohukaina and Keawe. So these towers here, near the Fisher side of the site, have yet to be developed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, we're getting close to the end of the time of our show, although we could look at many more drawings that you've done. Absolutely amazing performance here from an academic point of view already, and I think from a community point of view even more. Probably even to a point that I would like to revise the title of this talk here, which with Kaka'ako counterculture was a little provocative, which was the idea. But I think wrapping up, we could also say it's kind of Kaka'ako complementing culture, because this project really complements, you know, what you say what Kaka'ako needs now. So with that, thank you both very much for having been here.
Thanks
and
for
having
you
me.
both keep up the great work. We want to see this happening in reality, please. So thank you again
Thank you
so much. All right, thank you very much for having been with us, and see you again next week on Thursday from 1 to 2 with our show, Ali Yamashita's and Martin Despang's Urban Transcendence. Thank you.